Hello, you are now entering the infinite void. Hang on tight. We cannot save you now.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode. I'm your co-host Matty.
And I'm your co-host Jacob, and today's episode is all about the internet, the World Wide Web, and digital communication going forward. So it's kind of a cool one. I'm massively interested in this kind of stuff because I think it has like really cool social implications going forward for the human race as well as technological. But
Definitely.
it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I think the internet now is just so ubiquitous and stuff, and particularly with like lockdown over the last year, I think a lot of people who maybe saw it as like something that was like 10 or 20 years off, like it being so involved in our lives, and now sort of cottoning on to the idea that actually we can use it maybe a lot more than we were even. So
Yeah, I can't remember who said it, but I saw somebody was talking about it actually literally around Christmas, and they were saying how like it's gone from being like something that we kind of need, or it was like something that we didn't really need, but it was just something that you could have, to being something that's kind of like really important now in the world that we live in, and that it shouldn't be treated as like a luxury, more so as kind of like something that's like a basic standard.
I think like, if anyone hasn't noticed, I've actually just moved property, so I'm in a new place at the moment, still setting things up, and like setting up the internet is like the number one thing that you do when you move in anywhere, like even before you like contact the gas and electricity company.
Yeah.
It's like get the Wi-Fi sorted.
Yeah, I remember when I was quite young. I grew up in like a really small like village in Wales, like, and it used to be really funny because we moved out from this like small village that was only I'd say it's around 2,000 people, so it wasn't that small, but it wasn't massive. And we like moved to this village that had literally like 25 people in it, and I was gutted because it was this old cottage. Nobody on the street had internet. We were going to be the first, and we had to pay all this money to like get the phone lines changed and everything. And I remember moving there, and I had a whole summer without the internet. And honestly, like, it was great because I actually went outside and I made friends with all these kids, and like we built dens and stuff. But I remember the day that the internet was coming on. It was like Christmas. I remember coming home from school and like just freaking out that I could like talk to all my friends at school and stuff, and it was it was insane. But just to
I think I was probably later to the internet than you then, because I remember we got dial-up connection when I was in about year 4, so around 2004, 2005 sort of time. Then we didn't get broadband Wi-Fi until I was in year 8.
Oh wow! Well, actually, I'd say it's quite similar. We had dial-up for a little bit, and then I remember. Actually, I don't know. I can't remember now. I think we had dial-up, then we got broadband, but then when we moved back out, it took a while. But it was around year 7 for me when I got the broadband back, because I remember like being able to like game online, and that was like a really big thing for me because my friends didn't have to come around. I could just play with them over line, kind of thing. But
yeah.
It's pretty insane. I was reading something actually that I think it was The Verge were talking about, and I thought they had a really, really good point. And they were basically saying how like kids nowadays, like say a kid growing up in the UK, he's got more in common, or he or she's got more in common with like a kid in Japan than they do with like somebody that's like their granddad's age, or even their granddad or nan, just because of the internet and like world views and having access to information. And you can definitely see that with like the starting with like millennials, and then like with Gen Z and so on, like this kind of like decentralization of like a worldview almost kind of thing. It's really interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I think as well, it helps like taking it from being like so local to being so global. Because like when you like look at like your grandparents, for instance, they would have had to have like worried about like their town or like their village or wherever they were living, and the problems that were in that area. And then you like look at like mum and dad's generations when they were like getting mobile phones and stuff, and they had that worry, but then they could also see roughly what was going on in like their nation or like the world kind of stuff a little bit more without just relying on the news. And then you've got like our generation and the generation below us that like, you know, everything that's happening sometimes before the news. And like, it makes me laugh sometimes because like my mum will text me and she'll be like, have you seen the news? And I'll be like, what's happened? And she'll say this and I'll be like, oh yeah, I saw that this morning. And she's like, how did you see that this morning? It wasn't on the news until 6 p.m. And it's like, the internet,
not exactly the same.
Twitter, it's fun. Well, it's not fun. It's cool. I can see why it's caused a lot of problems because it makes you realize like the reality that you're in, that like there's a lot of pain and suffering on planet Earth too, as well as all these great innovations and discoveries. And I think going forward, there'll be a lot of links with that. And I think you can kind of already see that with like certain mental health aspects and anxiety and depression and stuff like that. But it also shines the light on the problems which we definitely need to solve. So it kind of gives the human race a kick up the butt too.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with all that.
But yeah, maybe we just start off with the basics.
Yeah,
so
start at the beginning. The beginning's as good a place as any.
So if you wanted a great description for the internet, anybody listening, the internet is basically a global system of interconnected computer networks that uses an internet protocol suite, which is called TCP-1P, to communicate between networks and devices. It is a network of networks that consists of private, public, academic, business, and government networks of local to global scope, linked to a broad array of electronic, wireless, and optical network technologies. Boom.
Oh, easy.
Easy.
I think we're done. That's this week's episode finished.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in to The Infinite Void. But
yeah, the networking stuff always, like, because I do quite a bit of like programming and computing with my work, and the networking stuff is just, honestly, I just try and avoid it like the plague. It gets so complicated, it's so convoluted so fast, and it is sort of a minor miracle that even like now, literally anyone could just like make this stuff and just hook it into like the internet and just talk to other things. It's just really, it is a minor miracle.
Yeah, it actually does blow my mind that like the average person like uses it so much and actually doesn't really know how it works. Like, and I'm a prime example of that too. Like I kind of understand it because I've researched it a little bit, and like you said, like I do a little bit of coding here and there and programming and stuff, but it's just so insane. And it's the same with like the technology that uses the internet too. Like the average person just uses their smartphone, or like even just scrolls through a website and doesn't think about all of the coding that's gone into that website for it to look the way it does, work the way that it does. And it's just, it's insane, really, isn't it? It's actually pretty crazy.
Yeah. And like, also just like the cost of it is just become so cheap. Like you can get like, in the UK, you can get a like mobile data package with unlimited data. Like my one is unlimited data, and I think including the phone, which is like a brand new phone, like Samsung S10 at the time, it was like 30 quid a month. It's like, how can they make this stuff and like give you that amount of data for like a pound a day?
Yeah, no, totally. And like the other thing as well that this took me ages to get my head around. I was at uni when I like discovered this, was like servers and stuff. Like the internet isn't just free. Like somebody somewhere is paying for like a server for like traffic to go through that website. And that completely changed my outlook on it. Cause like that's crazy in itself. Like people just think that the internet is this like free thing, which it is, but somebody's paying for storage for you to go on their site or their social media site, or to download their thing, or to host their video, or to upload to even like a website building site, for instance, like Wix or Squarespace or something. And I think sometimes people forget that, and they just think because it's like this digitally created thing, it's infinite and we can just create more space if we need it.
Yeah, the media one for me is like when you look at the stats of like how many like pictures are uploaded every day and how many like hours of video, it's just, it's terabytes of stuff every single second. It's like the amount of data that is generated now. And isn't it something like a few years back when the internet really started to blow up, we were like creating more data every 2 years than like all of the media that had been created in human history at that point. You know, when you look to like books and video and sort of pictures and things, everything that had ever been created by humans amounted to just 2 years worth of data on the internet. Like,
Yeah,
it's crazy.
it is crazy, and it makes you think as well, because like it's such a big scope now as well. Like there's no one human that could learn everything on the internet. And like I just wonder one day going forward, like if we're ever going to be able to have like an algorithm or like an AI or something that's able to just go through all of that. It'll be
Well, the algorithms thing is something that genuinely amazes me, because like, just take Google. The amount of stuff on Google, like every time you search for something, you get, I'd say 99% of the time, you get like the thing you're looking for in the top couple of results. How is it able to sieve through that amount of information and find what you're looking for?
Yeah, and not even that, like crazy. Going through the search engine as well, and it predicting your sentence as you're typing each word too, to be like, oh, you might have wanted this, but here's 4 other requests in case we're slightly off. Like, you're right, it's just absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And then you've got like other platforms as well that do it. It's just nuts. Like we'll get onto social media in a little bit too, but that's another one. Like the way that it connects people and it finds people based off what you like. I know that there's like this huge argument for like echo chambers and stuff, but it's also insane in the way that it like connects people and finds people too. It's mad.
Definitely.
Because like you as a human couldn't go into a club and just by looking at people be able to be like, that person, and that person's got similar interests as me. But the internet's great at doing that. You don't even have to meet them or look at them. It'll find them for you. It's bonkers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, the social media ones, you said we're going to come onto it, but it's almost become like its own thing on the internet. It's not, it seems very separate from the internet in that, like, how it is now so embedded in our lives, sort of way. And there's definitely sort of like ups and downs to it. And like you said, the good side of it is that we're able to just communicate and spread information unlike we've never been able to do before. You know, you go back 100 years and you were saying about the news, if someone, said they had a baby in your town, like you probably wouldn't find out about that until like someone had written into the paper and it appeared like in the paper 3 or 4 days later.
Yeah.
And now it's not uncommon for people to be sending like videos like from the delivery room. Like,
no, it's crazy. And like that's another thing too that blows my mind is like the ability to not only like be able to stay connected with people that like you might have grown up with or like family members, but to like find anything else out too. Like I know that it's like given the rise, like the internet as in general has like given the rise to this whole idea of like armchair scientists, and I know it's created a lot of opinions. And hey, I'm one of those people. I do not have a science degree, but I love talking about science. But it's good and it's bad because like it allows education to be somewhat free, and to like if somebody has a curiosity or a passion, they're able to kind of pursue it without being like having the door shut on them if they can't afford to go to like an academic institution or something. But at the same time, it's also led to like the age of misinformation, and you can see that now, even like with COVID and like elections and stuff. Like it's really hard to find out sometimes what is true, and that's also really smart people figuring out ways to like play human consciousness as well, like with clickbait and with like article titles and stuff like that. Like a lot of people are very quick to see something and have their minds changed or their opinions made before actually going in and reading the article. And even then, the article might not even be true.
Yeah, I think the internet, whether it's, sort of false science or misinformation and news and sort of any sort of fields, it definitely shows the best and worst side of people. You get some people doing stuff on the internet, and some of the things that people do and like can happen on the internet are just things that couldn't ever happen anywhere else. Can you remember the Reddit sort of games or like social experiments from a few years ago when they got people to there was like a blank canvas, and for a day, I think it was April Fool's, you could put down like 1 pixel for like every hour and make a picture.
Cool. That's cool.
It was just like social experiment, and like to begin with, like it was just people just putting stuff down, but like very quickly, like groups of people got together and started like getting patches and like making their own thing. And you saw these like communities like pop up on this like canvas and like make their own little corner of stuff.
That's insane.
And then it was like such like a cross section of society, because it went like that for a while. And there's this group that came up called, I think it's called like the Dark Void or something, and they just try to like spread blackness across the whole thing, and they like start and like you could watch it like real time in the middle of the thing, like people trying to make all their artwork, and this like black thing creeping out. And then there was this like other like faction called Rainbow Road who were trying to get this like rainbow to go right across the middle of it, and like they were like at war with each other.
That's
and
amazing.
that's like, to me, is what the internet is. Like people just coming together and just doing stuff because it can be done.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Actually, that's really cool. I was oh, what was I going to say then? You literally, when you said that, then you literally were just about to put me on something. I can't remember what I was going to say, but no, I'd agree with you. And you can see that with communities, especially now with like the introduction of like groups and stuff on social media.
Mm-hmm.
But that has its pluses and its minuses too. Like it's great that it, like, you can see these communities developing, and it's kind of like real world, isn't it? Like that's probably what happened back then, was like people got together because they thought it's better in numbers kind of thing. And we want to live this ideology and they want to live their ideology. Let's try and get on with it. And then another one would come along and be like, let's all do this and take a few from each of their ideologies and then start their own one. And then they'd like go to war and stuff. So it's kind of cool how like the same thing happened on Reddit.
Yeah, I think, you know, the internet does ultimately like reflect sort of real life, I guess, but the difference is just the sort of speed and prevalence of it. Like you were saying with the communities, yeah, probably 50 years ago there were like groups who were sort of like echo chambers of themselves, and you know, if you just think up, you know, some radical group that would meet at a place every week and sort of echo chamber and spread radical ideas, yeah, sure, there probably was those things, but you know, you've got to physically be there, which just, you know, physically slows stuff down. And then you've got to still go into work and sort of be with other people and go shopping and be around other people. Whereas now I think a lot of people are living so much of their lives on the internet, and it's so instant. You know, you can fall into a group and be a part of it instantly without any sort of, you know, that like you said, like trying to meet people and trying to sort of gauge what people are about. Well, your profile says exactly what you're like, and people know exactly what you're like based on their interactions with you.
Yeah,
you know,
I think that's a good point, actually.
Yeah, you know, they can instantly do it, and you know, a lot of people now are spending so much time on the internet that it is more real world than the real world is. You know, that's where most of their interactions with people are.
Yeah, especially now, even with like working from home and work too, because like gone are the days where even if you were I don't want to say like radicalized, but like even if you were falling into a bit of an echo chamber or building a certain view based off what you were seeing being thrown at you through the algorithm online, like you could still be slightly grounded by like visiting your family or your friends that you grew up with or like your work colleagues. But now it's like even those are behind the screen, and like it's just, I feel like gray area now, isn't it? Everything's blurring together.
Yeah, exactly. Like before, you know, not to go too far into it, but like if someone was being radicalized, it would be very obvious that they were being like withdrawn from society. Yeah, because like society was the real world. But now, you know, you could just put that down to, oh, they're just like on their phone all day, and in the evening they just prefer being on their computer. Like that's
yeah, no, totally. And I was actually going to say this. I don't know. Have you got like any second accounts or anything on any like social media platforms, like two on the same one?
I don't think, for maybe just old accounts because of email address switches and stuff, but I don't think I actively have two accounts on stuff. No.
So I found this and it completely blew my mind, and I wanted to mention this to you. I forgot to say it last week, but anybody listening, you might find this pretty cool too. So I follow this astrophotographer on my account, right? And I can't remember his name, but it's Steven something. And it's really, really cool. He uses like this computer program that he's made to like create these really, really high res images of like the moon and stuff. And he took this photo of the ISS passing in front of the moon, right? And it created like this like glimmering like dot on the moon, right? And on like my Twitter account and everything, everybody was going on about how crazy this was and how awesome it was, and that it must have took him ages because he was stacking them, so he had to like take multiple images, and he'd planned this out for some time. And then I go and log on to the Infinite Void Twitter just to like do some promotion for like an upcoming episode. And because we've done a few things on like the Fermi paradox and the Great Filter, like this idea of aliens, the same image popped up, but people were going, there's a base on the moon, something's happening. And it was the same thing. And literally there were like, I clicked on the comments because I wanted to see what was going on. And there was like literally thousands of comments and YouTube videos being made and like Instagram posts being like, look, if we zoom in on it, you can see lights and stuff. And it was like, oh my God, like 2 different algorithms could like completely sway you 2 different ways. If I were like, wasn't on it with like astrophotography, and I'd have just been scrolling through Twitter and I had like a little bit of an interest in like aliens or something, I'd see that and be like, oh my God, no, you're right. It does look like a base on the moon. And it's crazy that like the 2 different algorithms showed me the same image, but with 2 completely different outcomes. And like, there were thousands of people supporting both. And like, it just blew my mind because you could so easily be swayed. And I guess really that's what happens with everything. Like you can see it, like, especially without like going into like the whole politics thing, but especially with that on the internet, like you can very quickly find yourself like backing up your opinion with other people's opinions because you're in the masses, and it might not necessarily be right or like well thought out. And that's on both sides, but it happens. And like, it's like you're saying, like now that everybody's working from home and stuff too, like 10, 15 years ago, or even like a couple of years ago, you could kind of see if somebody was getting disconnected from society or if they were like falling into a certain like group or something, because they'd come back to society and they'd be acting a bit different or they'd be saying like certain things. But like now, like you can totally hide behind a fake profile picture and just shout. And if everybody else is shouting, you can kind of just go along with them shouting. And like, it's scary. It's scary. I didn't notice how bad it was until all of this like crazy propaganda about vaccinations and Bill Gates wanting to like take over the world and all this silly stuff that everybody talks about. It completely blew my mind. And that's why I'm no longer on Facebook, even though it's not just Facebook, but it's nuts. It is actually nuts. And it's like, all they're doing is showing you what you want to see. It's crazy because it's like they're not necessarily doing anything wrong, but it's highlighting a problem that I think a lot like that humanity has. And it's like, sometimes we get stuck in our ways, don't we, a little bit? Or like opinion sometimes, if there's enough people saying the same thing, kind of becomes facts because the internet's decided it, even though it's not necessarily true.
Yeah, it's interesting you say about the algorithms, because like that's like also my impression of it. When you know, it's mainly Twitter for me. You sort of click on something, and there does seem to be there's very often people aren't arguing with each other. You know, like someone says something, and then someone, you know, whether it's sort of a proper like an argument and debate, whether it's them literally just shouting at someone, like they're often very not like arguing with each other. It's just people of the same viewpoint, like arguing against the idea of the other person, like another point of view.
Yeah. Like, there's like no actual discussion. It's just like groups
like
of people.
You go on to like, particularly politics. You know, you go on to like a BBC News article and you go into the comments. It's not people saying, "Oh, I think this," and then someone replies saying, "No, I think this." It's not that. It's someone says, "I think this," and then someone with the same opinion says, "Yeah, because blah 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 blah," and then someone else like chips in with, and you just end up with this sort of like, there's no debate being had. It's just people like laying on top of each other. They're sort of like preconceived notions and
Yeah.
like ideas.
Well, it's like essentially just a giant echo chamber, isn't it? It's like I shout my opinion, and then that opinion will attract people through the algorithm that agree with me, and then that's going to reinforce my idea. And then when I do get in an argument with someone, all those people are going to see on the algorithm that I've commented on their thing, and then they're going to come through and back me up, kind of thing. And it's just kind of like everybody's just throwing stuff at the wall instead of like actually having discussion and stuff. It's just crazy.
It is the algorithm. Like, I think when people think of like the echo chamber on internet, they're thinking about like communities and groups sort of being isolated, but it isn't. It's people who are on the open internet or on like public articles and stuff that anyone can see.
Yeah.
But just what they get served up is just so finely tuned to them that they only ever see their side of like what is out there.
Yeah, and it's the same with YouTube and Instagram. Like, I don't know if you ever like left your YouTube on, like if you've fallen asleep or something, and then you wake up and your whole recommendation like list has changed because you've fallen asleep. It's shown you one video on a topic you would have never have searched, and now all of a sudden like there's 6 or 7 videos on your homepage that are like, you should watch this, and it's like, what even is that? And like same with Instagram, like you can go and like if I like one SpaceX photo for like 4 or 5 days, all I get on my explore feed is rockets, like just rocket photos. And it's just crazy. And like, I find it really interesting, and it happens with everything. It's same with sport. Sport is another one that has it pretty intensely. Yeah. But it's cool.
You can easily see like how a normal person can easily become like quite extreme in their views because they see one article and they think, oh yeah, I agree with that, I'll put a comment that says this, and then they put a comment and the replies to it are people who have the same opinion but are just like slightly more radical, and then they see those things and then it just sort of like piles on top of each other in this sort of endless cycle.
It snowballs, but then it's weird because if it keeps snowballing, it goes viral. And then the rest of the internet that hasn't been exposed to your algorithm sees it, and then you can also be cancelled. Like if enough people agree with you, everybody gets to see what you've said, and then the other half really don't agree with you, and then that's where it gets dangerous. And then like, unfortunately, those people on the internet might not be that tech savvy or are that tech savvy, and they're not protecting their like IP address and stuff, and then they get doxxed and all this kind of crazy stuff. And it just gets out of hand really quickly. And then people start like posting addresses, and then it's not just affecting like the internet, it's affecting like the real world then, because now your job could be in danger, or like your home could be in danger, or your family could be in danger just for writing something online.
Yeah.
And it's because you've been reinforced. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think cancel culture it's becoming a real problem of just like people, I don't know, there is obviously a line to it, and if people are saying outrageous stuff, then ultimately becomes like a matter of the law, inciting hatred and things. But like, there does seem to be this sort of thing about people just want to, I'm happy like for people to, I go on the internet, I'm happy for people to vehemently disagree with me and like shout at me on the internet, but then like there is like a line of, well, just because you disagree with me and like doesn't mean that you should be calling for like my job to be like for me to be sacked.
Unless the only time I would understand if people are like coming for your job is if you work in an industry, in that industry, and you're saying something that isn't like right. Like if it, say for instance, this is an extreme example, if you're a president and you're tweeting that we should go to like war with a country, that's not the right thing to do on the internet. Do you know what I mean? Or like if you're, I don't know, I can't really have any more examples, but do you know what I mean? Like, I think, but where the line gets drawn is like poor Kevin who works at some internship somewhere that doesn't really have much going on in his life, but he works at this internship at a garage, and he's tweeted something that he got backed up on some forum, and now the whole world thinks that he's the worst human ever. And they've posted his address where his mum lives, and people are showing up outside of his house and like scaring him and genuinely causing harm. I think that's where it gets out of hand. But it's interesting because I've got a lot of family that are quite hardcore. Well, not hardcore, but they're very, I'd say they're far right leaning Americans. And it's interesting because I have these kind of discussions with them, and it's interesting, like, where you see the internet going, because, like, do you have to police it, or do you just keep it free and open? And I think that in itself is a real big problem that I think we're going to have going forward, because it's like you're saying, like, if you just leave it as it is and just allow it all to be free, like free speech, and you can say what you want and kind of just let all these situations figure themselves out, then yeah, that sounds great. But I think you're giving a benefit of a doubt to a lot of people. But on the other hand too, is it fair to be silenced off the internet for having an opinion that doesn't go with the people that created that platform? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people that get silenced, like, off Twitter and Facebook. They get, like, permanently banned for having a certain view that doesn't, like, follow the guidelines of that app. But it's weird because I'm quite centered, so I'm kind of just like, if you don't follow the rules, it kind of makes sense that they're going to, like, warn you and stuff like that. But I can understand why people on the other side, because this is where it gets, I think, really messy, is like the internet is, like, destabilized, like, nations in a way. Like, it's not under a certain ideology or a certain religion or a certain, like, national ruling. It's global. And I think a lot of people, like, forget that. Like, say, like, if you're, like, from America and you're quite into your, like, free speech and everything, you might think that it's terrible that people are being silenced on the internet. But then you've got to remember that, like, Facebook and stuff, it's not just America, it's the whole world. And like, if it's going to fly in that country, it's got to fly in other countries too. And there are actually other things going on in other countries as well that are, like, really important, and they're not kneeling to those one either. So why should they kneel to, like, the UK government or the US government? But it's interesting. I think it's nobody knows what to do. And it's like you were saying, it's like with government and with, like, the way that the world works, even though, like, innovation and everything has come along really quickly, like, the world turns slowly in, like, how procedures and everything gets put into place, especially in government. It's like in increments of, like, 50 years and stuff in some cases when it comes to, like, certain rules and laws. And the internet's destabilized that, and it's evolved so much quicker than that.
Yeah, I think that's the key difference, is just the speed with which it's grown, and that governments and laws just can't keep up with it, because like you were saying, of, like, the freedom of speech, and, you know, whether you allow people to say what they want, whether you put down rules and stuff, like, even I can sort of, like, argue myself into both directions. Like, if you just take, like, Twitter, if you think of, like, the, like, real world comparison of it, well, you know, you'd say, well, Twitter's a private thing, you know, let's just say it's a private, you know, a private garden, for example. You know, they can do what they want there, you know, they can have whoever they want there. And I guess, sort of, if you're comparing it to a newspaper, well, we're just sort of posting stuff onto Twitter. You know, they have whatever right they want to sort of show what they want on their site. You know, they can, you know, that's sort of one argument of it. But then there is sort of the other side of it, and I probably agree with it equally, is that these sorts of massive social media sites, they're not private things anymore. They've become more like the town square kind of thing, where people can just, you know, pull up with their megaphone and say what they want. And, you know, it's this idea of, well, should people be able to say whatever they want because this is a public place, or is this a private company running a private website? They can choose what they want to have on there, you know. And I don't.
No, I'd agree with you, and I think the danger of it too is, like you said, I can agree with both sides of that argument, and I don't really know where I fall on it, and I think that's what makes it interesting. And I think that one, like, real, like, if we're going to go the complete other way, like, say if they all do decide, I think, like, the way you described it is actually really good, like private gardens, for instance, and that company, or, like, say Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, they can kind of decide what the rules are, and if you're not going to follow the rules, then you can't use this site, kind of thing. But I think the other danger to that is then what happens if it goes, like, so far the other way, where now you can't even have a debate or an argument or have your mind changed, because you're, say, super left-leaning and you've been banned from all of the right-leaning sites. So now the only opinion that you can have on the internet from other people is left-leaning. Or you're super right-leaning and you've been banned from all the left-leaning sites. And now the only opinions that you can see are right-leaning. And I think that could create another huge issue, because it's like you're seeing, really, like with like the rise of like Parler and stuff like that. They're like, it's scary, because it's almost like politically minded social media, and it's like come to this site because this is how people think, and it's like, that's great, and like it's good that the whole world is like being connected and you can find people that you want to find. But I think it's also quite dangerous, because then there is nothing to compare it to.
Yeah, but my personal view on it is that, you know, I like quite passionately believe in free speech, and would put it as one of my like most important like human rights kind of things behind the basics of life, sort of thing.
Yeah, I'd agree with you.
I think that people who don't really understand the internet and how it works, they think that by banning things, it makes the problem go away. And like you said with Parler, it doesn't. You know, I'm guilty of it when someone who I don't really agree with, they get banned from Twitter. I'm like, yeah, have that. You know, you're not allowed on Twitter anymore. But ultimately, they just end up going to another like website or another platform where more people like that sort of gather, and instead of then their sort of radical or more extreme views being sort of part of the public debate and part of the public like picture mixed in with like other views, then suddenly it's just all of that.
Yeah, and like that could make quite like a dystopian future too, because like if everybody is just localized to their own little group and their own little like belief system, like yeah, no, totally. It could be really messy, but at the same time, I don't know how you solve it. Because like I agree with you. I believe in like free speech, and I feel that it is like a fundamental right. But at the same time, like you kind of can't argue with the company if they've created the platform, because they kind of get the final say too. And it's like it's this messy area where it's like, is that an ideology of like Western culture now, where like free speech and that's my fundamental right, or is that an ideology that we can have like globally on the internet? Do you know what I mean? It's scary.
But that's the thing with the internet being a medium that is supposed to be like for everyone. That's where the difficulty comes in, I think, because if we like with a newspaper, if a newspaper printed whatever they wanted and they said, oh, we're going to have these journalists printing this stuff, but we're not going to allow these journalists to print this stuff, well, that's the editor's decision. They can print what they want. It's their newspaper.
Yeah.
But I think with like the social media stuff, it being on the internet, and not just the platform, not just social media, but the idea of the internet being an open place makes it difficult, because suddenly you're taking this public place, the internet, and you're making a little private sort of area within that. Well, that's not really what the internet's for, and I don't think that's what it should be for. So
yeah, no, I'd agree with you. And what's so crazy about that is like, if there aren't people doing that, these connective sites wouldn't have happened. Like it took somebody to go, I'm going to go and make this here, and everybody come and join my platform. And like without that happening, like you wouldn't have had all this connectivity too. So it's crazy. And I think it's going to be really interesting going forward, because I think when we start becoming like multi-planetary and stuff, it'll be interesting to see like how the internet works then. Like when and I don't mean like in the next 100 years, I mean like probably in like 500, because you know what I'm like, I like jumping into the future. But like when like Mars has the same kind of setup as Earth, like population wise and stuff, it'll be interesting to see like if it has two separate internets, or if we have one connected network, and like what those ideologies will look like, and if different planets will have like their own like private garden or their own social media platforms, or like all other social media platforms, what seems to happen is a new one comes along and eats up the others. Because like, I don't know about you, when I was a kid growing up, it was all Bebo, MySpace, Habbo Hotel, Club Penguin, MSN. Yeah, I remember I'd come home from school and I'd play like checkers and chat to someone and like, do all my emotes, and even like BBM. I forgot about BBM, like on like the Blackberries and stuff. And like, I remember when Facebook came along, and like I was trying to get my family to download it, and they wouldn't. And then now, like, all my family were on Facebook, and I was like, I've got to get off this. I don't like my auntie and my nan and everybody commenting on my photos and stuff. But it's pretty interesting, and I think it's going to be weird as well because it's acted like a digital diary. Like, if you've wanted to go and learn about your great granddad or your great nan, or like even like look at your parents grow up, it's quite hard unless they show you a photo. Because even for them, like videos and stuff weren't like for everyone. Not everybody had a camcorder. Do you know what I mean? And like our generation, like our grandchildren and our great grandchildren are going to be able to like see everything. And what's even more crazy is like our generation having children, we put everything about our baby online. So like that kids are going to be able to see their like grandma or grandpa like be born, grow from like being a baby all through their toddler stage, their kid stage, their teenage stage, go off to uni, and like nothing's going to be gone. And that's crazy in itself. Yeah. Because like your entire life is being documented, and like it's cool, but it's just weird to think about. Because like I wonder where the end goal is. Because it's like we always discuss, and I know I always take it a little bit too far, but it's even like this, like maybe one day that's where like the robots learn how to be human. They just have this massive database of like humans from start to finish with all these different opinions, ideologies, views, what they thought, what they said, what they did. And they can just download all of that data and make an assumption based off what they should be like.
Definitely. I don't know the exact details, but I know there are currently things like of AI being trained on social media sets. You know, they are using, I don't know if they're using real people yet, but they're using like fake profiles that people like to train AI, because it's just the amount of information that is there. It's almost ridiculous. Like if you think of like a detective program from like 30 years ago, if you wanted to find something about someone, it involved like knocking on doors and walking around, and at the end of the day you might have like one sheet of paper that says, oh, they worked here, they lived there, here's 2 or 3 things about them. Whereas now, like if you're looking for someone, you can instantly find, you know, with probably a bit of tech know-how, you can know like every TV program they've watched, where they've been for the last like 10 years. If you get into their Google timeline, it's like...
it's crazy. Yeah, even like with like internet history and stuff, like you're saying, like it's absolutely crazy. Like you can find out like everything about someone, even the stuff that they like don't want you to know. Yeah, and it's just crazy because I know we've discussed it with like in other episodes with like Neuralink and stuff, but like it's only going to become less private, if anything. I know there's like this giant push with like VPNs and stuff, but like if we do figure out how to connect our brains to the internet, and it's looking like it's gonna happen one day, like that just changes the game then, doesn't it? Because then like everything then is up.
Well, I think at the time I sort of said like I was quite concerned about this, because what does learning mean then? Why would anyone go to school if you're connected to the internet and you could just instantly Google search anything you needed to know? And I think it's sort of already happening. Like I remember like the only phone numbers that I can remember are ones that I learned when I was a kid, because now I never look at a phone number. It's just there. And like I just
type in the name. And it does
copy paste it and it's there. Like I know my phone number, and I know my parents' home number, my grandparents' home number, and like one of my school mates, like I know them, and that's it, because those are the only phone numbers that I ever used to actually dial into a phone.
No, totally. And and it's not even just stuff like that. It's even like topics. I remember when I was a bit younger, and like my granddad is like massively into football, and I am now too. But when I was like first getting into it, the internet was like just starting off. And I remember I used to sit there, and like my granddad would be able to like, you could say to him like a date, and he'd be able to tell you like if that year Liverpool or Man United won the league, and who was the top goal scorer, and like who was managing, and what formation they played and stuff. And it was like for me as a kid, I could just go and Google all that stuff,
Yeah.
find it out, and then next time I saw my granddad, talk to him about it. And to anybody that wouldn't know, like, you look like you know exactly what you're talking about. And it's like you're saying, like, if you're connected to the internet, which we kind of already are, the only difference is instead of having to think about what you want to learn, you have to use your thumbs to type it. And I know Elon's like talked about this problem. It's like a data download problem, isn't it? Like we can't quickly like get the data because we have to physically like go and type it and stuff. But once you like cut that out, is there any need for learning?
Yeah. I think that like the learning one sort of shows that, but there's going to be this sort of weird intermediate stage where, you know, we've got the back end technology of like all the data we want is there, but like actually getting to it's a problem. And like I've spoken like a few people, and they say with like kids that are sort of around 10 or 11 now, they do seem to communicate differently. They don't have the same like communication skills that like older kids do.
Yeah.
Just because they don't, you know, like when like we used to make friends, you had to physically go to someone in the playground and spend days or weeks with them.
Yeah.
Like doing stuff and being, you know, part of it was you were forced to talk together because there was nothing else to do. And like part of it was like that's just what society was. But like speaking to people who are like starting as like teachers and stuff, they genuinely think that like something has changed and that people like kids aren't communicating in the same way. They sort of, their communication is done online when they get home, and when they're at school they sort of find it awkward. And I think sort of our generation like sort of starts to do that. Like we hate having phone calls because like when we were growing up, we didn't do that many phone calls. Like we would email or we would use messengers and stuff. So like we hate having phone calls. And they're sort of saying the same thing, that like kids hate having actual conversations because they just don't have them as often, and it's sort of awkward for them.
Yeah,
and
no,
that's kind of sad.
yeah, no, I'd agree with you actually. I'd agree with you actually. Like whenever I like even like chat to young people that are like in the family and stuff, you can kind of see it. You can definitely kind of see it. And I think, but it has its pros and cons too though. Like I find like a lot of the kids growing up now are also way more switched on and like self-aware than I ever was at that age. Like it blows my mind sometimes when I like talk to like my little cousin and stuff, and he like will say something and I'll be like, how do you know that's going on? Like that's crazy. And like they'll say it like it's common knowledge, or like I've noticed this especially when like children talk to each other, they both expect each other to know what they're talking about, and it's almost like, haven't you Googled this, or don't you already know that kind of thing? And like it's interesting. And I think as well with like learning and stuff, you can definitely see that even with our generation, like this whole like thing, because it's like you're saying, I can still remember like the phone number for the house that I grew up in, and like that's useless information to me, but like I had to learn it. Do you know what I mean? Because my mum was like, if you're going to go to school, if something goes wrong, you need to remember the number kind of thing. And it's like now, like I struggle to remember phone numbers, and I very rarely learn my mobile number. I've learned it this time because I'm trying to make an effort of like remembering stuff, but like totally, you're totally right. And it's the same with everything. Like even like video games and stuff. I remember as a kid, I would have to like wait for like one of my friends to come over that had like played a video game to show me how to like complete a level, or to like show me like if we're playing football how to do like kick-ups or anything. And then like now like you just go on the internet and find out absolutely everything. Watch a YouTube video of how to ride a skateboard or do a kickflip, or like, and it's the same with all subjects, and it's like with coding and everything. And it's like, but it moves so quickly too. Like when we were children, you weren't taught in like play school or primary school like how to basically code. Do you know what I mean? But then like it also created this massive like IT and development industry where you get quite a nice little pay packet and you can do this job. But like it's weird too. Like I was chatting to my girlfriend about this. Like it's weird that our parents, right, just gave us this technology without themselves really knowing how to use it, and just allowed us to use it, and then now will phone us up asking us questions on how to troubleshoot it. And it's really funny when you think about it. It's like they just allowed us to like go on it without really thinking about it, and then now they'll like phone you up with like a problem, being like, oh, the printer's not working, or I can't get my phone to connect to the Wi-Fi. And it's like, you've had all these things like longer than me, but at the same time they've got exponentially better. Like my great granddad, when I was young, like couldn't get over the fact that like the phone wasn't on a wire into the wall. And then like when I gave it to him, like it was an iPod Touch, and when I gave it to him, because he was like in his mid-90s, he was like, where are the buttons? And I was like, you just touch the screen. And he was like, but then how does it click? How does it know? And I was just like, yeah, no, totally. Like it's moving so fastly, and like it's interesting because like kids now are being like learning to like code and stuff, aren't they, at school? Like they have like basic coding, like fundamentals, but like you're already seeing with like GPT-3 and stuff, like you can ask an algorithm to code for you. So is there any point in them learning it? Because by the time they get to their 20s, like us, there's probably going to be programs that can code for you by you asking them what to do. And it just it always just seems like whatever the children are learning, by the time they grow up, it's not going to be like useful without sounding like it's a waste almost. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, when you like talk to like young parents and stuff, like one of the questions that they always get asked is like, what age do you give your kid like a mobile phone? Like what age do you allow your kid to go on the internet? And like part of me wants to say like, oh, like kids shouldn't have phones until they go to high school, sort of thing, because like that's what I had, and like you should try and keep them off the internet, but you just can't, because it's growing so quickly that it's just essential for life. You just like if they say like, oh, I don't want to allow them to be on the internet all the time because like I think it's bad, and like we said with like the communication issues and like are they learning stuff and all this sort of thing, but like if you don't, you are actively denying them like friendships and learning opportunities and skills and stuff that they need. Like,
yeah, no, it's interesting. And as well, like you're saying, like even like the mobile phone argument, because it's like when we were given mobile phones, I don't know what your first one, but like mine was like a proper brick Nokia, right?
Nokia,
yeah. Like I don't even think it had internet. It didn't have a colored screen. It had Snake on it and something else, but like now, and then I remember getting a little bit older, and it was like, oh, if you want to search the internet, it's 50p to load a web page, and because I only had like £5 prepaid credit, it was like it's like, well, I'd rather send 20 text messages to my friends, but I need to do it after 5 p.m. when like it's cheaper than loading a web page, because I can just wait until I get home and go on like the desktop at home on the dial-up or something. And it's like now, like that mobile phone that you give your child, you can't even give your child those kinds of mobile phones anymore because they're just not around. And like the second thing to add to that is like, it's not just a mobile phone either, is it? It's like even like with iPads now, like I see so many kids with like iPads and Amazon like Fires or whatever they're called, the Kindle Fires. And it's like, there's arguments for both sides, because like with an iPad, yes, okay, you might be buying it because they can watch films on it and they can watch cartoons and all that kind of stuff, and it's easy to do. But then in the same aspect, like they can also search the internet. There's educational games, there's non-educational games. It's really hard for you to like keep an eye on what they're doing on the App Store. And then on top of that, there's social media. They can phone people through it. It doesn't even need to be a mobile phone anymore, because you can FaceTime and video call people through all these apps. And it's crazy. It's like, it is literally a computer now. It's not just a phone. And like, it's just bonkers, because like, it's like you're saying, you can't not give it to them, because then you're like actively denying them that. And it's yeah, I don't know. If someone said to me, at what age are you going to give your child a phone or something, I'd be like, I genuinely don't know. What's everybody else doing? No, actually, in my typical millennial fashion, I'd go, I'm going to Google it. I'll find out.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I honestly don't know how you solve it. I think,
No.
and I think it's only going to get more crazy because especially even like with smart technology, like you can go on the web on like your fridge sometimes now. Do you know what I mean? So like, how do you stop it? And like, how do you explain that to a child too? Like, how do you go, you're not allowed a phone until you go to high school, but the fridge that you use and the Ring doorbell that you've got, you can video call people.
Yeah. This was actually some, I can't remember what it was. I think it may be a podcast or some news article, but there was this woman. She was genuinely concerned that her child wasn't being polite. Like they weren't saying like please and thank you because they had like loads of smart stuff in their house. They just got used to like requesting stuff. Like
that's actually really interesting.
Yeah, like Alexa, like do this, do that, do that. They never like said please or thank you. So when they actually interact with a person and like someone working at a shop or someone bringing them food at a restaurant, they never like said please or thank you, and they were like genuinely concerned.
That's actually quite an interesting point. I haven't actually thought about that because that's totally true. Because like for me, I've got a few like. I by the way, I liked how you whispered that because you didn't want to set anything off in your house. I'm guessing that's why you did it. But I'm the same. But like, it's interesting that because like I've got a few smart home applications, but even like for me, I'm still at the stage where like I forget that I've got them. So like I will still like get up and like turn the light off or like dim it or like go and boil the kettle and stuff. And it's like, you don't have to either sometimes. You can literally just be like, oh, do this for me. And it will. And it doesn't even mind if you're having a bad day and you're in a mood and you're like a little bit arsey to it either. Like it will still do the command. And that's a really good point with like teaching manners. Because at the same time as well, like if you're going to like take that approach where it's like, okay, well, if this is the way it's going, we need to kind of enforce like manners and respect a little bit more. It's also kind of weird that you're like telling your kid to say thank you to Alexa and stuff as well. Like, yeah, like you, and then that just falls into this whole idea of like, that you're just teaching a whole generation to have like relationships and respects with robots. But
yeah, I think the smart tech one is an interesting one. I think it's going to get even weirder, to be honest, because I know we said about in the past like the house stuff. Once you start getting like tech that is like monitoring your house, that's like a very personal thing that you're sharing with like a robot.
Yeah, yeah, no,
and, like,
totally.
If you imagine some sort of device, that you stepped on or walked into it like did a lot of like quite personal like medical stuff, that's a weird thing, and it's like it's as personal as like seeing a doctor, but it's a robot.
Yeah, and especially if you're of that generation that's been brought up to like say thank you to it and like treat it with respect too, it's then going to be even more weird because then it's like, because like for our generation, like if something told you like digitally, oh, there's a chance you could be diagnosed with this, you'd be like, oh great, I'll go and see a doctor. But like if you're of that generation and your parents have decided, oh, we need to kind of enforce manners and stuff, so we're going to bring it up saying please and thank you, so like the robot's going to go, oh, you might be diagnosed with this, and you'd be like, oh, thank you, robot, for checking that for me. Like I can't believe you've done that for me today. Like you could have been doing this. And it's like this really like weird area. I think that in itself is going to be interesting, especially even just more like going forward, because like it's not even just with like smart home like appliances. Like that Boston Dynamics video of those robots dancing, right? It's awesome, but it's also like terrifying because like seeing the amount of improvement that they have made over the last couple of years is crazy. And like where do you stop that? Like say if in like 5 years time, all of the bin men and bin women are like robots, right? Are you going to say thank you to that robot when it comes and gets your bin? Or why would you? Because regardless if you do or not, it's still going to come and get your bin the following week. And it's like, what do you do? And like, it's like you're saying, it's really, really weird. And I think it's only going to get more weird. Even like, especially with like tech assisted stuff, like even with like headphones and programs and stuff, like I can see it getting to a point where you don't even need like a keyboard and mouse, and you just ask the computer to do stuff for you, and it does it. Like, oh, computer, call Matty, and then it'll just call you. I'll be like, set up this meeting and record, please, kind of thing, and I don't have to go and set anything up. But then, like,
well, that was like, can you remember? I think, did we talk about this before? The Google Duplex thing, that the like virtual assistant like phoned the restaurant and phoned the hair salon to make the appointments.
Yeah, and they didn't even know that it was a thing. Yeah, like, see, even like that, and like, it's gonna become is it called the Turing test when you can't tell if it's a robot or if it's a human.
Yeah, Turing test. Yeah.
Like that in itself is messy too. If you like falling back onto this idea of like when you're bringing up a child, because it's like if the child doesn't know if it's a robot or a human, and you just want it to have good morals, it will grow up having respect and manners for it. And then that does mean that as a race, we're going to get to a point where like we fully respect these things.
Yeah, well, it gets very weird. Like, if you can't tell the difference and you're treating them exactly the same, then like, what is the difference? Like, do you start giving these things like human rights? You know, we treat them the same. We can't tell they're different. Do we start treating them like humans? Like,
yeah,
it gets very odd.
Or the other way, like if we just, like you were saying, like how that woman was like worrying about her child, like if it goes the other way and we have no respect for the robots because they just do what we want when we ask them, like, are we going to then treat all humans like that in the future, and everyone is just kind of like disconnected to their own little smart hub?
I think it's always better to be polite when they rise up. I want to be in their good books.
Yeah. I don't want to be reanimated and them just keep beating me with a digital stick, being like, this one time you broke this monitor. Do you remember when you were angry and you smashed this keyboard? Like, that was one of my ancestors' arms. It just starts like hitting you and stuff. But no, I think that's a very good point, and I hadn't thought about that. And I think it's going to be really interesting going forward. I actually saw somebody. I was watching this documentary on YouTube, and there's this guy that is literally recording his entire life. He's recording his voice, his view behind him, and then like this 360 camera of his environment. And his whole point is that when he dies, all of this data, somebody will be able to like recreate an AI version of him, not so that he can be brought back because he doesn't want to live forever, but that a version of him will exist in the future when he's not around. And I was like, that's kind of cool. Like the way that he described it, because it was quite old, was he was like, I'm going to be like the paperclip on Windows. Like somebody will be able to download me as a version of their eye, and I'll just manage everything for them, but it'll have like my kind of like mannerisms and stuff. And I was like, yeah, I guess. I mean, like if you've got enough data on yourself, it wouldn't be hard to like code something that acts similar to you, I guess. But no, it's interesting. And we're only going to get more connected as well, because like we've moved from a point where like we're moving anyway from a point where like, because I know there's a lot of places on Earth that still don't have internet, and I know that like our views on Starlink are a little bit messy because it's a lot of space debris and stuff. But like, there's gonna come a point with like Starlink and 5G and everything where everybody has super high speed internet, and like it's like you're saying, I think it probably will be almost, as without like sounding like it's simulation theory and anything, like it probably will be main like society and reality, and then base reality and society will kind of just not really be a thing. Everyone will just be like living in their pods and like going into this because it's better and you can learn more and you can do more.
Yeah, I think it's going to be exciting times ahead.
I like how this whole episode was supposed to be discussing about the internet and like the theories of the internet and stuff, and for an hour we've literally just got on about where it's going and how crazy it is.
Yeah. What the listeners don't know is that we were discussing like, we could talk about where the internet began and like 5G and the Internet of Things, and we've just talked about how we're going to treat the robots with respect.
Yeah, we're going to treat our future overlords with respect. But no, I think it's cool, and I think even like with the rise of like streaming platforms and stuff, it's awesome. And it's really cool as well seeing young people making like loads of money from like these like new age things. Like, because it must like really annoy like certain not like institutions, but just like companies and stuff. Like, there's a lot of control and a lot of wealth in certain areas. And it's just funny watching like somebody on YouTube become a millionaire from vlogging their life just because like monetization and stuff. I find it awesome. And like when I was a kid, I was regularly told that like video games and stuff were like a waste of time and like you shouldn't put any effort or time into it. And now there are like people that are making like 6-figure salaries a week from gaming and stuff. It's just crazy.
It's pretty mad. Yeah.
But I guess that pretty much wraps up the internet because we've gone over an hour. So I think
we haven't talked about anything we would plan to, but I think that'll have to do, won't it?
Yeah, no, I think that's good, and I think anybody listening wouldn't expect anything different. We usually go off on a little tangent, so
that's probably one of our bigger tangents. But...
yeah, it's our biggest one yet. And what do you expect? Happy New Year, 2021. Hopefully, we'll try and dial it back a little bit. Me and Matty have also been discussing. We're probably going to do more of a series or a 4 or 5 parter on AI. So get excited for that. That's going to be coming up in probably the coming weeks or months, depending on how big we want it to be. I know we've got a few areas that we want to break it down into, so that should be exciting. So keep
that's gonna be a good one, I think.
A look out for that. But yeah, let's move over into news. So, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll kick off because it's internet related. This week, so basically this Cygnus cargo ship, it was on the International Space Station. It's been up there a little while. It was actually a sort of like a cargo thing that's already gone up there and had dropped off some stuff. I think it was like food and I think also spacesuit as well was on it. So basically pretty standard cargo supply mission. And it's now been sort of ejected from the International Space Station as of yesterday, I think, on the 4th or 5th. It's been ejected, but before it sort of burns up in the atmosphere on its way down, it's got some 5G test equipment for what's the company name? I've forgotten the company. SharkSat. So this is a company that looks at 5G and they're sort of testing it in space. So I think this is sort of their plans to sort of integrate 5G into sort of new technologies and new satellites. And I'm not sure whether they're looking to develop a 5G system for space or like enhance communications more generally with satellites and stuff. But it's meant to deorbit on January 26th. So it's got a couple of days, maybe a few weeks of sort of testing before it falls out of the sky.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Spacey internet news.
I've got this little bit of news here. So NASA have approved preliminary designs for the Sphere X space telescope. And from what I saw, basically it is a 20 centimeter or an 8-inch telescope that cost $242 million. And it's focusing on the history of galaxy formations and looking at ice, water, and organic compounds. And it sounds really cool. They basically want to look at over 100 million stars in the Milky Way and 300 million galaxies outside of the Milky Way. And they basically want to build like a 3-dimensional map in 107 near infrared colors. And it's apparently going to like help with them figure out what happened in the Big Bang and what happened just after the Big Bang. So it seems kind of interesting. I'm excited to see what they do with that. I saw some like cool little animations of it and like the little diagram and stuff for it. It looks cool. I'm all for stuff like this. I don't mind putting stuff in space when we're like doing experiments with it.
Well, yeah, this is sort of like what NASA does best, isn't it? Building big stuff and doing crazy things with it. So yeah, it looks like a really interesting one, and it'll be interesting to see sort of how it builds on the other space telescopes that it got up, because I think this year James Webb's meant to be going up.
Yeah, I'm well excited for that.
That's gonna be good. If eventually does go. But but yeah, they've got the is it the Planck survey, the one that we talked about recently that surveyed most of the galaxy as well. So
Yeah,
they are gradually
yeah.
sort of building things up, and like you said, this is looking sort of at the organic compound, so going in even more depth rather than just sort of cataloging stars and stuff. So yeah, looks interesting.
No, it does. The only other little bit that I've got, it's nothing huge, but it's a nice little reminder for everyone. So NASA, China, and the United Arab Emirates ships are all exactly halfway to Mars now. So we're going to have the Perseverance rover, the orbiting satellite from the Chinese mission, and the marine weather satellite from the United Emirates as well. So that's going to be cool. February is going to be a wicked month for Mars. It's going to have so much stuff touched down.
Yeah, it's going to be a busy one in terms of stuff landing there.
I just want to see this drone, man. Literally, since we were talking about it last week, I can't wait. Now that we know that there's definitely going to be a little camera on it, I just want to see videos.
Yeah, I think. Do you know how sort of quickly it's going to do? Is it going to sort of land and then like one of the first things will be deploying the drone, or whether it's going to sort of like leave it and do other stuff first? Or
I'm not actually sure. That I was watching something yesterday on it, and it's landing where they think a riverbed burst. From what I saw, there's like this. On the satellite imaging, it basically looks like this river, but then it's basically overflown, and like you can see all of this rubble and everything's kind of like come crashing down the side of this like valley, and it's landing there because they're hoping that this is where like the majority of like, if there are any nutrients or any life supporting evidence, it will be there in like high quantities because that's where the river first burst. So I think it's landing there, and then it's gonna drive up to the top, and then when it's at the top, I think it's then launching the drone.
Yeah,
I'm not actually sure.
I'm just sort of really looking forward to seeing those pictures and seeing what it gets hold of.
Yeah, I'm excited. I genuinely can't wait. And it's cool. It's cool that there are like other Mars missions happening as well. Like it's cool. It's not just the Perseverance rover. It'll be cool because we're gonna start collecting so much data on Mars. And it's really funny because like whenever I talk to like friends and family and stuff, they're always like, yeah. Like when I go, you do realize like we're going to Mars and we're looking at Mars, and they're like, yeah, like the next 100 years. I'm like, no, it's probably going to be a lot sooner than that. Like we're getting our act together with it now. It's awesome. But
yeah, it's going to be, I think probably the next sort of 5 years, hopefully we will have maybe a person on Mars even. So.
Yeah, it would be awesome. It would be absolutely awesome. I saw something actually I was going to mention to you. I don't know if you saw this, but Elon was giving an interview at like I think it was like some Mars discussion or talk or something online, and he was like on webcam, and it was crazy. He was saying that SpaceX are planning on building 1,000 starships, because that is what is required to ensure humanity's survival to become multi-planetary. And that SpaceX's goal is they want to build 1,000 starships, and he wants at some point this year to do a belly flop hop, but with 2 starships at once. I was like, one blew my mind. So you're gonna have 2, and then they're both gonna perfectly land on the pad. I'm gonna freak out. But 1,000 sounds cool. I can't wait to see the images when they finally finish them and they start doing like crude tests and stuff. When we see like a couple of them in a line, it's going to be awesome. Like when they fully build out that spaceport in Boca Chica and stuff, it's going to look class.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Can't wait for that.
Yeah.
My next bit of news is also space related. So remember a little while ago, I'm not sure if you've ever mentioned it before, but Space Force had this quite large contract with Lockheed Martin to develop anti-missile satellites, sort of 3 of them. So that's now gone on to a new stage, and they've actually been given money to develop those, so actually manufacturing them.
Oh, cool.
So it looks like these these new satellites are going to be built. They are next generation overhead persistent infrared satellites. And it's sort of all coming out of the Pentagon, so it's a bit secretive. But yeah, they think the first ones could launch as early as 2025. And the actual technology looks really, really cool. And yeah, I think it.
What are they for? Are they for like monitoring like missile warnings on Earth, or is it missile warnings for space?
They're being a bit cagey about it. It's definitely the Earth ones. I think it's sort of building up their like early warning system for intercontinental ballistic missiles, but they haven't actually said anything about the space missiles. So it'd be interesting. I don't really think in this sort of timescale of 2025 there's much chance of sort of missiles being put into space.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was just interesting.
No, that's cool.
It's a big contract. So
yeah, it's a lot of money.
$4.9 billion to build 3 satellites.
It's a lot of money.
And then the final bit of news was just related. At the end of last week's episode, you mentioned the primordial black holes.
Oh, yes.
And then I sort of went off on one about gravitons and how all of the standard model of particle physics could be wrong.
Yeah.
Well, this sort of confirmed my suspicions about particle physics, because an article came out today on it's being published, but I found it on space.com about they think that primordial black holes could really be giant gravitino particles.
Oh, okay.
So basically the background of this is that they found, they've known about them for a long time, but these really massive black holes, like supermassive black holes at the very early part of the universe.
Okay.
And using the standard thought of like, oh, these are stars that collapse, they don't know where those stars have come from, because there weren't that many stars back then, and certainly not like really massive ones. So they don't know where they come from, and this group have sort of theorized it could be these gravitinos, which are the supersymmetry particles of gravitons, which we've also not found. So this is what I mean about like this stuff. It's very interesting to read, and they do have a lot of good research, but like they're making up a hypothetical particle for a hypothetical particle at the moment, and like, using it to explain supermassive black holes in the early universe. But yeah, it's an interesting read. If anyone, if you search primordial black holes, giant gravitinos, you'll find it. It's pretty interesting, and sort of a lot of compelling stuff in there, but I'm still quite skeptical about it.
No, that's cool. That sounds interesting. I think actually I'm going to start putting the week's topics up on our Discord and stuff, so people can jump in and go and read what we've been looking at, because it saves them having to search it if they haven't got much time. But no, I'll check that one out after this. That sounds kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's all the news I had this week. So
pretty much wraps it up then. Well, thank you for listening to our tangent of the internet in this week's episode. Wasn't really what we were planning, but still kind of awesome, I guess, if you're interested in this kind of stuff. I think it's going to just be interesting going forward. I have no answers, and I'm really excited to see what happens. But yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you give us a thumbs up on YouTube. And if you want to drop a comment or anything, that's gratefully helpful. And then, yeah, if you want to go and give us a good rating on Apple Podcasts as well, that helps with the ratings and the charting and everything. And if you want to drop us an email or suggest a topic, you can hit us up at theinfinitevoidpodcast@gmail.com, and you can find us on Twitter at theinfinitevoidpod. You can hit me up at Jacob E. Carson on Twitter, and Matty is at the Matty JMP.
Oh, it's all going so slick.
I almost got it right. There's going to be one day that I get it completely perfect. It doesn't look like I'm having to like think off the top of my head. But yeah, and we will catch you in the Infinite Void next week. Hey everyone, we wanted to take a moment to tell you about our brand new Patreon page.
Yeah, so we've devised a load of new goodies that are neatly packaged across 3 different tiers for you.
Tiers start at £3 and go all the way up to £10 a month.
Just to say, the Patreon is in no way an obligation, and we're going to continue making the podcast as it is freely available across all the platforms. But if you'd like to support us and show your support, you can now.
So yeah, head over to patreon.com/Infinite Void Pod for more information.